Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to start panel number 17 at the Interstate Legal Amazon Consortium, and we're going to talk about REDD Plus in the Amazon, sustainability and guarantee of the rights of traditional people. We are going to have the Carbon Plus program of the state of Amazonas, which is the initiative of putting into the market the carbon credit with the CONARED. My name is Eduardo Taveras. I'm the Secretary of Environment in the state of Amazonas, and I'm going uh, to host this presentation. And this panel is going to be divided. First, with the presentation that will engage the Public Defender's Office of the state, working with the guarantee of rights of populations, vulnerable populations, either socially or environmentally. This is an innovative initiative from the Public Defender's Office, and we also brought Dr. Júlio Pinheiro, the counselor of the Amazonas State Audit Court. It's a paradigm for public control concerning the environment. So Júlio Pinheiro is going to bring in an innovative way how the court of audit it works, and that is going to show you how the Amazonas state has been working in an institutional way with the policies for control and guarantee of rights. And then we are going to have the experience of the non-government organizations for the sustainable state of Amazonas with this build of the carbon market that is just from the social standpoint. And we're going to have an initiative of Coca-Cola company in Brazil representing a positive social impact in the productive chain. And at the end of the panel, I'm going to present how this structure is enabling the state to develop the REDD Plus mechanism and the safeguards. So I'm going to invite to this panel, according to the space that we have, I will give my opening remarks and then I will call everyone uh, to introduce them, and then during the presentations we are going to have different panels. Please come to the stage, Ricardo Paiva, the representative of the Public Defender's Office in the state of Amazonas. You may take your seat just for the audience know the different panelists, and I'd like to invite Júlio Pinheiro, the counselor of the Amazonas State Audit Court. Please take your seat. Counselor Gabriela Sampaio, she is the manager of innovative programs in Amazonas, Sustainable Amazonas, and Vitor Bicaneto, who is representing Coca-Cola Company. You may take your seat, Victor. I'm going to be here and I'm coordinate from here. I will coordinate from here. As I've told you, the idea is that we can introduce this structure that the states of Amazonas has. I'm not talking about the state government, but how the agendas are connecting in the possibility to control and act in such a way that we guarantee to traditional uh, communities, riverside communities, Colombo communities, to have the guarantee of inclusion with the REDD Plus mechanism in the state. So I will be strict with our times because we don't have much time. So I'd like to invite Ricardo Paiva to present the work of the Public Defender's Office in the state of Amazonas. Most of you know deeply the Amazon. It's very complex to guarantee rights, and the role of the Public Defender's Office is key for us to promote this guarantee of rights in large scale in the state. So please, Ricardo Paiva, you may start.
Não.
Só um minutinho. Ok, pode. Tá funcionando aí a. Não, não.
Sim.
Funcionou. Funcionou?
Não.
Consegue passar por aqui?
Are you able to use the clicker?
Por aqui, dá o ok. Por favor,
Puder
pode.
voltar um slide.
Aham.
Bom, boa tarde.
Good afternoon.
Primeiro,
I'd like to thank
ao consórcio
the consortium,
da Amazônia
the
Legal,
Legal Amazon Consortium,
do
with
Norte,
all the governors in the north of the Amazon. I'd like to thank Altavera for the opportunity for representing the Public Defender's Office here. It's the first time that a Public Defender's Office is participating at COP27. So that brings a joy and also a great responsibility to us. So I'd like to greet all the friends and authorities in this panel. And my idea is to speak about the Public Defender's Office work concerning the adaptability to the effects of climate change. In Brazil, there's an institution that provides legal assistance to the vulnerable people impacted by climate change, and this institution is the Public Defender's Office. The state of Amazonas, you might know, but it's important to remember, is the greatest state in Brazil. We have more than 1,500,000 square kilometers. And on the other hand, countries such as Sweden, France, and Greece could feed all of them with only 4,200,000 people in the state in terms of population. But we have the greatest coverage of forest preserved, and this is something that brings a lot of joy and responsibility, as I said in the beginning. Besides, the state of Amazonas has the greatest indigenous population in the country with 65 indigenous peoples. The traditional people are very much present in this region. So why the Public Defender's Office? Because Brazil has a public model to access justice that is different from other countries. We have an institution who is able to guarantee the defense of those who are not able to pay for a lawyer. This is the Public Defender's Office, in this model of access to justice that is completely different. And the vulnerable groups, which are impacted by the climate change effects, have in us an institution that will provide assistance. You may see some pictures from the countryside of Amazonas, and the floods from 2021 were the greatest ones in all times. And the Public Defender's Office was able to go there, observing closely the needs of people. And the flood is altering the water regime, but also the daily life of people, the daily life of families, children from the riverside population and indigenous population in general. And these effects can are very drastic. We have Irundepé in the flood of 2021 here. This area covered with water are streets and land, and the water comes very strongly as an effect of climate change. Some news pieces. This flood was so huge that from the 62 cities in the state of Amazonas, 48 of them were affected, and they decreed a state of emergency. So they needed support from the state government and the federal government. The Public Defender's Office was able to monitor these families side by side. They are isolated in this period with no water. It's the state with the greatest uh, river basin in the world with no drinkable water for the population due to the floods. There's lack of food as well. That's when the Public Defender's Office proposed the concession of this financial aid, and this financial aid was conceded, and we were able to achieve more and reach more than 100,000 families. 100,000 families had the support of the state government with this state aid, with this financial aid to overcome this moment of crisis. They lose their residences, they lose their documents and their livelihood because they live from family farming, and sometimes they have to uh, to to enter new areas with deforestation in order to produce and have food. And it was very important to have this financial aid because during this emergency state, they were able to subsist themselves. And the Public Defender's Office is providing services to the indigenous peoples and the riverside communities. In general, those who are living close to the rivers, the Amazonas River, Solimões rivers, Negro rivers, and they take their livelihood from the rivers. And with the floods, a lot of diseases and garbage come, and it's hampering their lives and their livelihood. The work of the Public Defender's Office, especially in the South, is reducing the land conflicts. The south of Amazonas has this strong aspect of agribusiness, and you have land conflicts because of that. And the Public Defender's Office is able to interfere to regulate the land and to bring peace. People living there for 15, 20 years, they have their lands taken by those who have this economic interest and are not concerned with the defense of the environment. We guarantee access to citizenship, and we are able to go to the vulnerable communities to give access to basic documents such as birth certificates and IDs, so they are becoming citizens as well because of that. So here we have a picture from the triple border between Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. The Public Defender's Office has participated in the greatest collective wedding of indigenous people. 106 couples. It's not the Public Defender's Office coming to the indigenous communities to change their culture. On the opposite, they are seeking the Public Defender's Office to have access to citizenship and justice and get social benefits that many times they do not get. So that's what we want to show the world, that the Public Defender's Office knows its important role. It's providing important services, but it's enhancing its work more and more. We have a prototype for this unit for serving people in the forest. This is a unit that we are implementing in some municipalities in the state of the Amazon, in the state of Amazonas, and we are here to enhance this support being closer to the indigenous communities, riverside population, and vulnerable population in general, because in the state of Amazonas, we have uh, technological and geographic vulnerabilities. We have evolved a lot in the industrial hub at Manaus, but when we observe the countryside, many people are digitally excluded and they need access to information and rights and justice. That's it from my part. And the final message I'd like to leave with you is that those people who are the most affected by the effects of climate change necessarily are the poorest, the most vulnerable ones. And this population has in the public defender's office an institution that is providing assistance with, and these people are also defenders of the forest. Thank you so much, Ricardo Paiva. You brought a key point to what we are discussing in this climate conference. We are not only discussing finance and emission compensation. The climate crisis is affecting how the institutions are working, the way of, of the rights, of how they come to vulnerable populations. So we noticed that that models such as the work of the Public Defender's Office adapted to this world of climate change, affecting directly the most vulnerable. That should be an important point for our discussions here concerning the different mechanisms of funding concerning climate change. That's why it's so important to discuss REDD mechanisms and other mechanisms for paying for environmental services that may guarantee not only income but also rights to the vulnerable population. Thank you, Ricardo Paiva. That was key to show the dimension and the challenges of the state of Amazonas in face of the climate change, not only impacting the ecosystems but human populations. Since the topic in this context of climate change is coming, I will invite the counselor of the Amazonas State's Audit Court, Júlio Pinheiro. Among the counselors in Brazil, he has a very innovative work considering the Amazon according to the Constitution as being a national heritage. And being national heritage is part of the public control, the work of the audit court in the state, and that was inaugurated in the Amazon, so in the state of Amazonas. So I'm very honored to have your presence here, Júlio Pinheiro, to share how we can adapt in this changing world concerning the work of the audit court. You only have 10 minutes. I'm sorry for that, and I hope you can be brief. Thank you so much. I'd like to excuse myself. I'd like to stand up. I'd like to thank Eduardo Taveira, who have been working with this preemptive work in this environmental field. It's very successful. And I'd like to tell you that it's not strange to have the audit court here with you. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Adalberto Val, my professor. I'm very much honored. So why is the audit court engaged with environmental control? Let's optimize time and move on. What could I say? We're going to achieve the sustainable goals established by the United Nations in the Paris Agreement if if the audit courts are able to focus on the SDGs. And everything is based on the Constitution. Everybody have an ecologically balanced environment, which is an asset of common use and essential to a healthy quality of life. So the public prosecution must preserve it for the present and future generations. And in the audit court, we are having this preemptive environmental control with preventive audits in several different areas, solid residues, and environmental licensing, among many others, because we work with this perspective of risk and not damage. The environmental risk, when it happens, when it's signaled, we must immediately act. Because while being a control institution, we have the power and we must work with the environmental damage and to prevent them. So it's a preventive control that in this perspective of risk and not damage, and we analyze the different environmental risks, and we analyze what can happen in the future as it was shown before. So these are the SDGs established by the UN, and we are trying to focus on the preventive control. And initially, I talk about one of the audits on solid waste, and it's based on this 305 law from 2010 that is about the inspection of the different dumps. We have 61 open dumps, and we have one control landfills in which in reality is a dump with gates because it's not complying to the requirements and the concepts of a landfill.
Na cidade de
Here we
Iranduba,
have some examples in the city of Iranduba, in Manaus, and in other cities. I'm going to ask you to please pass the slides a little faster. That is what happens in terms of the final discharge of the waste. This is an image of a small river, a stream very close to Manaus, the stream of São Jorge that will exit on Rio Negro and Rio Solimões, the two main rivers of Manaus, and they will exit on the sea. There we can see the lack of attention from the standpoint of waste collection, that all could be recycled or reused. We have here the president of Coca-Cola, and I'm sure that he knows about the reverse logistics of the PET bottles, as I said, that will be thrown in the Solimões River, in the Negro River, and that will end up in the sea. All of those images are shocking. I'm sure that I'm happy that there are no children here in the room, but we have to be attentive. We have to be vigilant, that through those audits, we can form public policies that will be practiced by the government. These are the Amazonian people that collect garbage every day. These are the people that collect garbage every day, and they earn 400 reais a month without any guarantee, without any social assistance. They have no kind of formal contracts. This is a sad reality of Amazonas, but it's not a privilege of ours. This is a sad reality of the whole country. We have over 1,000 open dumps, which is a challenge for all of us who work with public management, who work with the public administration, fighting against those problems. We see hospital garbage in the middle of the Amazon forest, in the heart of the Amazon forest. Right next to the Negro River, we see the contamination of the creeks, the contamination of the streams, and the managers have to respond administratively and even legally, because we sent these complaints to the public prosecution. This is an example of the methane gas in the city of Parintins. The airborne risk is a reality for us as well. Some legal actions that we have established. This is a table of airborne risks. Manaus has 8 strikes a month, but Brasilia had 54 strikes in 2010. This is the scenario of some municipalities in the state of Amazonas until 2018. These are data of CELIPA. And this is the result, unfortunately. We are potential victims of an accident involving a vulture. If you don't remember, this is what happens in the Hudson River in New York, where a plane crashed and fell because of birds that enter the turbines. This happens every day in Brazil, and we have to be vigilant. These are the audit findings. No waste treatment, hospital waste. I have 5 minutes. These are the goals that we want to achieve: implementation of environmental education, economic use of the waste. Environmental education is paramount for us to have an effective work from the standpoint of awareness raising of the children so that they don't discard of their waste anywhere, and billions of reais can be recovered reusing the waste. This is our view for the planet, and also reuse of the degraded areas. We had some audits in conservation units made by the Court of Auditors, the audits where we see effective aggressions, lots of aggressions on the forests, on the protected areas. Treatment of water, this is another audit that we carried out on the treatment of water, and this audit carried out found lots of horrible situations, water that is served to the population with no drinkable characteristic. This is a service that we provided with 2 universities, the University of Amazonas, the State University of Amazonas. It's called Amazonian Waters and Peoples of the Forest. There are many professors and scientists working in this project, trying to demonstrate and see the situation of the illegal mining in the west of Amazonas, analyzing the situation of the water, and to see the history of what we have in terms of contamination in the whole Amazon basin. And to finish, talking about the fires, the deforestation and fires in the road 319. From January to August, we had 7,000 square kilometers of forests burned. We analyzed those fires, so that the Court of Auditors could help in the governance of the states. We want to help the state of Amazonas not only by supervising and punishing, but also contributing to a better future to all of us based on what is established by the UN and the SDGs. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Excellent, Dr. Julio. Thank you very much. Dr. Julio brings a very important issue. In the world of climate change, the public institutions, either municipal or state institutions, they have to have this commitment of having a management focused on the assessment of environmental risks. And the Court of Auditors of the state of Amazonas is making sure that the municipalities and the states are aware of the impact of their activities. So in case of any lack of action, the Court of Auditor is able to do their job. So it's very important that the structures of the state are including in their actions the environmental aspects as an important drive of their activities. So we're going to end this first session, and I'm going to invite a non-governmental entity and a private company that are going to talk about not only the environmental risks, but the actions that may have a positive impact in the communities. I'm going to pass the floor to Vitor Bica. Vitor Bica is a very important partner. He is from the Coca-Cola Company, and he was a supporter of the GC meeting in Manaus, and he is one of the partners that improves the lives of these communities. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Taveira. It's a pleasure to be here. It is my 7th COP. I didn't go to the last 2 ones, but I am back, and it's always good to learn and exchange experiences. And I would like to thank you for inviting me to this meeting of the consortium. We have been in the state of Amazonas for 30 years, and we saw Ricardo and Julio saying that we have 97% of vegetation coverage preserved in the Amazon. This is a joint work by many of the institutions that are here. We are proud to be one of the founders of Faz Junto Bradesco with the government of the state, and we are happy to continue supporting in the preservation of the forest. But we also have the populations that live in the state of Amazonas, and we wanted to focus on supporting them and strengthening those communities. Our challenge in Amazonas is summarized in 2 great goals: contributing to the regional development and decreasing the inequalities. When Dr. Julio talked about the waste, we this year had a very important work in Parintins with SEMA called Recicla Galera, to incentivize the population to discard the packages of Coca-Cola correctly. All of the material that was consumed in the Parintins Festival this year was collected and recycled, including the styrofoam, which was one of the biggest challenges, the biggest challenge of the floats in the parade. That is making a difference in the state. With FAIS, since the beginning of the operation, we started with the Bolsa Floresta, protecting the regions of the state, and recently we were with MMA in the strategy Adapta Park. We have a partnership with Institute Mamirauá in the Jabaui Buriti Park in preservation actions. Mamirauá Institute is now doing a survey of the fauna and flora of the park, and it's going now to carry out a preservation report. And we're also having a great work with water. We talked about the lack of drinkable water, so we're carrying out a very interesting work of drinkable water supply. This is going to be forward to the federal government, and we're going to move forward in this sense. We're creating a legal framework, which is payment for environmental services and water resources. And the nicest thing we have is a project of Guaraná supply chain. It's called Eyes of the Forest. Today, we support 17 states and 100 communities, supporting almost 4,000 families. We have a huge work of generation of income and employment in the countryside of Amazonas. We don't look only at the forest, we look at the population who lives and wants to remain in these regions. Today we have a strong success for Manaus. Today we have an industry that requires a lot of training and lots of people are unemployed. So our challenge now is to keep them where they live, generating employment and income. We have technical assistance, strengthening of their institutions, fair remuneration, and a very strong work by Imaflora of traceability of our Guaraná supply chain. Today, Coca-Cola buys 100% of the Guaraná produced in Amazonas. But the communities have several needs. Now we are taking water to those communities, the communities who live inside the forest. We also work on their infrastructure. Many communities are poor, they don't have a space to store the Guaraná, they don't have cooperatives. So besides working with technical assistance and training for the production of Guaraná inside the forest, preserving the forest as well. We are working on the strengthening of infrastructure and access to the water that they didn't have before. And in the last few years, most of the Guaraná from Coca-Cola comes from family agriculture and this model of agroforest, which we understand that it is a model that should be replicated to the countryside. Today, we support over 14,000 people in the state, in the countryside, generating income and employment. We're probably one of the companies that supported this population the most. This is all taken then to the industrial hub. We produce then the concentrate of Coca-Cola that is distributed to 7 countries in South America. Coca-Cola is today the biggest exporter of the Manaus trade zone. I think the biggest responsibility here, Tavira, is having the concentrate, the sales, the exports, but also how we can contribute to those communities that sometimes are needy, are in need, and how we can see a migration of the family agriculture of Guaraná to big producers. And after we did that, we changed our purchase basis, and over 80% of the Guaraná from Coca-Cola comes from family agriculture. 20% comes from big producers. This is a little bit of what I wanted to tell you, and our commitment of continuing contributing to the development of the state without forgetting about the forest. During the pandemic, we also supported them with the vaccination, with their food supplies. Those who are in Amazonas, they also have to do something else, not only think about the economy. For us, it is a great pride to be able to contribute to the state of Amazonas in their sustainable development and also the protection of those people who live inside the forest. Thank you. Thank you, Victor. It is a great pleasure to have the Coca-Cola Company as a partner of the state of Amazonas. The production chain of Guaraná was decreasing. As Victor said, there was a migration of the Guaraná producers towards more dangerous products. The companies should be in tune with the impacts of climate change, and they should include in their portfolios the support to the production chain, and I think that it brings value to the brand. The brand should recognize the challenges that the communities have in overcoming not only the challenges of climate change, but also the challenges of poverty. As the governor said here, this is one of the problems that we have, along with the conservation of the natural resources. In order to do this, we need to consolidate in the state mechanisms that should favor environmental conservation. And this environmental conservation should reach the communities. And now I will invite Gabriela. Gabriela is the Solutions Program Manager of Foundation Amazonas Sustentável. She's going to talk to us about the partnership between Foundation Amazonas Sustentável and the agendas that can allow that the standing forest and how the standing forest can have a value for appropriate policies and the financial resources for the communities inside the Amazon. You can talk about this path, Gabriela, and how you can find efficient mechanisms that can promote the payment of environmental services to the communities in Amazonia.
Thank you, Secretary, for the invitation. And I'd like to thank Fabrice as well, our Secretary of Environment, and the consortium for the Legal Amazon Consortium for debating the Amazon 24 hours a day. If you don't know, the foundation is Amazônia Sustentável Foundation. We are going to be 15 years next year, and Victor has talked about the establishing of the foundation, and we have as a motto to perpetuate the standing Amazon for everyone, with the sustainable development coming to 40,000 families and more than 10,000 people served every year. We have a state with 42 conservation units. We have been working in 22 implementing the Guardians of Forest, a program for paying environmental services. We have 4 lots of work with constant work from the team. And I'm going to bring the perspective from a partner of the Secretary of State to talk about safeguard, the environmental safeguard. We've been working to the structure of the foundation. We're working with traditional communities, Quilombo communities, and indigenous communities. So we are empowering these populations and bringing the debate for the deepest regions of the Amazon in the countryside. And the safeguard are criteria established by UNFCCC for the countries willing to work with projects and initiatives of REDD and PSA. So we started in 2018 with the states of Amazonas, funded by the country of Norway. And when the foundation was implementing locally to support the state in this REDD jurisdictional program. And that first initiative was very important because we were able to consult all the mesoregions in the state of the Amazon with the guarantee of almost 50% women participating in the discussion. So we had around 47%. It was the first effort in the state. The safeguards are sitting to discuss with the city halls, the associations of indigenous peoples, Quilombo communities, and organized civil society. We had 6 workshops, and I highlight that we had 2 in the deforestation region in Acuí and Novo Aripuanã cities. So we are engaging different sectors in this discussion, and from that, we were able to hand to the state as a product from this initiative 6 key components of safeguards that should be part of the RED sub-program in the state of Amazonas. We have the state policy 266 with the mechanism of sub-program. I can mention 3 great topics that emerged from this discussion, and that is the right to land, the equitable share of the benefits that was not signed in any legal mechanism of the state, and also the livelihood improve in terms of gender and youth as well. That was very much mentioned by the groups participating. As Júlio Pinheiro mentioned the SDGs, one of the mottos is not to leave anyone behind. So we cannot talk about safeguards and mechanisms without the direct engagement of the groups that are the most marginalized in this these discussion processes. And from these components, we got to the second phase of initiative. That is a second initiative, also with the support of the task force and with the finance of Norway and the support of the of UNPD to access this standard that is Art 3. It's a standard that has been referred to as the main one for working with the emissions. And in the second moment, we have our advancement in terms of safeguard, and we have decree. We have the decree 42968 that is regulating the safeguard criteria and the sharing of benefits. So we could advance a lot due to that. And in the second moment, we've been observing what has advanced in the state and what are the safeguard criteria to advance from the regulation perspective so that the state is able to advance with the working roadmap. With the next steps for us to mitigate the environmental risks and also improving the opportunities that are generated from the carbon market. So we are in this moment when this subject of environmental services and climate finance is being mentioned all the time during the conference and before the conference, and we will move on speaking about that. We see a COP with more and more audience from the society bringing this agenda to us, and I'm trying to show what the state of Amazonas is doing and how fast is engaged in this process, because the partnerships are important for us to come to the ground with partners who are in the territory and know the different complexities and challenges that we face all the time. And to wrap up, I'd like to talk about the advance in the state of Amazonas, not leaving anyone behind. That's why we need safeguards and we must advance with them, and observing how this region could thrive with the entire country, with the initiatives and public and private partnerships and international partnerships. So this is a positive message for the cities. Thank you. Thank you, Gabriela. Very good. And there are several important aspects in what you mentioned. And one key point that will unite what we just said is how to promote the guard of rights in this complex environment, which is the Amazon. So this is a great concern for such a COP, because many times we only have a superficial look at the Amazon. And we cannot forget the 2030 agenda, the Sustainable Development Agenda. And the first SDG is the reduction of poverty. It's not the first by chance. The reduction of poverty is connecting as a result expected in terms of the awareness to work with the safeguards in special towards communities at environmental risk or traditional communities as we have in the Amazon as a whole, and as a primary focus for the carbon market, for the environmental conservation. This is a key agenda for us to measure the success of these enterprises. We have the preservation of resources on one hand, and we also have on the other hand the improvement of the indicators in terms of poverty and so on. So we are going to wrap up with this video brought by Júlio Pinheiro with this very important song to our region. And I'd like to take this opportunity to show my slides, because the state of Amazonas, tapping into the structure we've been debating in the last years, and also tapping into the CONARED, we are going to bring 2 lots of carbon credits for this conference that were credited from the National Accountability, so that we can start the game. At some point, we believe that to land the RED projects is the best mechanism to evaluate safeguards, the guarantee of rights in the populations. And this is a first attempt made by the state government to implement a policy based in the structuring of the legislations, considering that we have a public control which is effective in the state, that we have mechanisms that may guarantee to the traditional communities to guarantee their rights, that we have an ecosystem working with partner companies to promote sustainabilities, and NGOs working in partnership with the state to enhance the public policies. And we are launching the Carbono Plus Amazonas program that is promoting the vintage credits as an important mechanism for us to leverage and promote new mechanisms. So the idea here is to work with what the Amazon states have done in the past, reducing emissions, and it's important to have an agenda to value the previous credits with new commitments to strengthen the control agenda in different states. We came from a 2-year pandemic when the poverty processes increased in our region, and if we don't have a creative mechanism to fund the climate agenda, it's going to be very hard to advance, since we are accumulating the poverty rates in Brazil. And it's a result that, in my evaluation, has to do with climate justice, because it's on the shoulders of these traditional communities the solution for the world. But there's no counterpart so that these mechanisms can revert in direct benefits to these communities. So next slide, please. Is it working? The repeat has 97% of its natural coverage conservated. It's a paradigm. As much as we talk about the increase of deforestation, which is serious, and the increase in the forest fires, which is serious, the question should be, how can we have 97% of our forests conserved? If we are able to respond to these questions, we are going to have solutions for the world. So many times we ask the wrong questions concerning the Amazon issues. But what's important is to highlight that even with this potential that we have, 50% of the population is at poverty line or below poverty line. So as urgent as climate issues is that we have this perverse impact that is the reproduction of poverty in great diversity areas. I'm not saying that the poverty is the cause of climate change because it is not. It's not the developing countries that brought the world to this climate crisis that we are facing. But what is perverse in this process is that it's more acute in the traditional communities and it's increasing the poverty in these areas. So what's common is that besides having this high biological diversity and high rates of conserved forests, we also have this consistent poverty in this area. So this is the double challenge we have to reduce poverty and to conserve the forest. This is possible, and this is the discussion we should have. While we are separating this environmental conservation and the poverty, we are going to find solutions that won't solve all the problems. If we find ways to solve together all these issues, increasing wealth and reducing deforestation, while we cannot find a way to unite those issues, COP after COP, we're going to discuss the same issues. And it's possible to reduce poverty, but it's necessary that each one of us, developing countries, more developed countries, can find and acknowledge that we are part of the same problem. No one should be left behind. This is the motto of the 2030 Agenda. Who advanced should also help to the others advance so that the economies can be more similar to reduce poverty in our areas. And that has an important development for states such as ours, because every time we go to the traditional communities, every time we visit riverside and indigenous communities, everybody is asking us about this fact. When is the forest going to provide results to improve the quality of life of all communities in the Amazon? This is a question that we were not able to address. Why does poverty persist in these areas? This is the topic of our discussion, our political discussion. While we have poverty as the drive of the choices and decisions in the Amazon, I'm sure that the political quality won't advance at every level because poverty is still causing the purchase of votes and so on. So the best way of producing wealth is of having wealth is producing wealth. The Amazonas should generate wealth and environment conservation, or we are going to be discussing the same issues at every COP. Now we have the next one. The state of Amazonas, based on REDD+, has a potential of reducing the past emissions of over 480 million tons of carbon. And what is the great challenge? We must find a price for these tons. And why is that? Because it's a service that was provided. Even if they were previous emissions, there have been an investment for achieving these results. And we should consider these investments now, because if we consider them as past investments, we won't change this reality. We must find ways to precify the old credits, or the states will be penalized in new commitments. So it's important that we have a clear message from the Amazon states that we have the possibility to advance in new commitments as long as the old commitments are remunerated. And the state of Amazonas has been doing its job, especially over the years, implementing structures and legal mechanisms that may support the RED transaction in the state of Amazonas. So since 2015, we've been making an effort in the state government to apply the regulation, and we created the environmental service regulation. We were approved at CONARED. We had the first call of institutions able to transact environmental services in the state. We had a second call to enhance the demand of uh, institutions. We had the recent approval with this ordinance of the Scientific Methodological Committee approving the RED Plus projects in the state. And now we have the decree that we brought for this COP concerning the division and launch of the previous carbon credits to be launched at this COP. Nowadays, these are the state institutions which are accredited to work with environmental services, either RED, either water, or other payments for environmental services. We have FAS, IDESAN, CITAUE, WCS, and we are going to have a fourth call to enable new institutions, so few invited because the call is public. And this is the message. It's possible to compensate emissions with the Amazon carbon. The decree that was signed in the last Friday is making available the CONARED credits for the state of Amazonas from 2006 to 2010, 390 million tons, and from 211 to 115 for 118 tons, with over 800 tons in total. All the carbon made available should be applied according to the decree.
Estado do Amazonas. 50% da captação vai para
50% of these investments go to the State Fund of Climate Change that is going to benefit public calls for the technology, the improvement of production chains, fight against deforestation and forest fires, and 50% are going to be invested in the state conservation units where the credits were obtained, and how to apply to those projects. We have the first step, which is the registration of the institutions that are going to promote the RED programs through the public call. This analysis is document-based and it's made by a committee, and then we have the registration of the executing agents, and then we have the analysis of the projects. The analysis of the RED projects is made by the Technical Scientific Committee. The Technical Scientific Committee will issue an opinion that is going to be homologated by the Secretariat of Environment. And then it is going to be monitored by the State Council of Environment that analyzes the results of the projects. And the benefits then will be distributed 50% to the conservation units and 50% to the State Fund of Climate Change. So there is a social control from the beginning to the end, so that the RED actions can comply with the safeguards that are established. With this, we take this chance to thank the consortium of governors, and I would like to finish by making an appeal. We have to find a market for these old credits. They are paramount to fund all of the changes that we are talking about here. So far, all of the commitments that are carried out in the states for the reduction of deforestation and for the safeguards are carried out by the states, by the federal district and the other federal entities. We need this international commitment that is being renewed here at COP to be effectively established to yield results where we need the most. I'm talking about old credits. I'm not talking about what I considered the green pre-salt for the states of the Amazon, which is the carbon stock that we have in the forest, which is non-priced and that is not accounted for. And that might be the main driver of change in the peoples of the Amazon. But this is a different story. Thank you very much. Obviously, because of the time, we are available to talk after this panel about the mechanisms that were presented. Thank you very much. I would like to show you the video that was made available by Dr. Júlio. It is in his presentation, so we can wrap it up with his video.
E é isso. E a gente já sai daqui, já desocupa.
So we can leave here and they can start assembling the next panel while the video runs. Thank you very much. We have a 15-minute delay, but we started with a 15-minute delay. Let's take a picture.